Hello and welcome to the OKPreps Extra Show. I'm Patrick Prince, joined as always by Barry Lewis. Barry, last day of the year. We're recording this on December 31st. How's your year been in a nutshell? Just
Wild, crazy, and busy. A year from now, I will predict that I will be at the Tournament of Champions final day because they're going to be closing it out on December 31st. That's when the championship games will be held in the 2025 Tournament Champions. I know we'll get to the 2024 Tournament Champions later on in the show, but that'll be one prediction for 2025 I'm going to make.
well, my big goal of this year, Barry, was to average 10,000 steps a day in walking, and I'm barely gonna make it. I'm gonna end up averaging 10,051 steps a day.
Wow, congratulations, Patrick.
It's it was a little harder than I thought, to be honest. I thought it would be not, I didn't think it'd be easy, but I thought it would be manageable and doable. It was hard. It was really hard because to average 10,000 a day, you can't really take a day off, like, because it'll just kill your average. And that's what I learned quickly. Like I'd have, 5 days of a 7 day week, 10,000, 11,000, 12,000, really solid days. And then take a day off and have like 4,000 and your average is just shot. So I was like, well, if I'm going to take days off, I'm going to have, 12,000 days, 15,000 days. So it took me, in January, we had some snow in January 2024, and I got off to a really slow start. So anyway, that was kind of my big goal. And I really needed a strong December to hit it. I needed to average about 13,000 in December, and I'm going to do it. So anyway, I'm really impressed with that. But enough about me. Let's talk a little football, Barry. So I thought something cool that we would talk about would be like, let's talk about the emerging stars of 2025 in high school football. We don't want to talk about the best players this year because you are in the process of picking your all-world team, which will publish late January, yes, on All World Football?
That's the goal.
That's the goal. Okay.
And with that in mind, want to send out a reminder to all coaches. If you have not sent in your nominations to me or have not received the nomination form, please get in contact with me at barry.lewis@tulsaworld.com.
There you go. So we don't want to talk about the best players of 2024 because we're going to do that in All World. And once those are released, you and I will sit down and talk about it on this video. But for now, let's talk about some emerging stars for next year. You want to start with BJ Jones at Bixby, Barry? This is in no particular order, but let's start with BJ. Why don't you tell him why he's on your list for emerging stars for next year?
Yes, we're not ranking them, and we could go on forever, but we're limiting to five or so emerging stars. And these stars are already players who've shown flashes of their potential, but really haven't been had the spotlight to their own so far. And so BJ Jones from Bixby didn't get a whole lot of freshman this past season, really didn't get a whole lot of touches during the regular season, except towards the end. He started when Bixby was turning some games into blowouts. He was starting to get a few carries. And in the championship game, was when he really showed his potential. It was in the third quarter. He took a pass in the flat and just zoom, took off, raced 50 yards for a touchdown. Huge play in that game, one of the best plays in the Class 6A1 state championship game. And when he did that, and also talking to him after the game, I had flashbacks to the Presleys, the older Presleys, Brendan and Braylon, and remembering what they were like as freshmen. And so I got that same feeling from BJ Jones. So look out for him. That was like only his third catch of the year, and it was his longest play of the year. And so that really was a preview of things to come, I think.
So is he just a running back, or is he used in the return game on defense, receiver, anything like
Right
that?
now, it's just saw him as a running back. And again, he really didn't get a whole lot of touches this season because who knows where his abilities could branch off to. Maybe he will be used in other ways. But what a way to break in for BJ Jones.
Again, we're not doing this in order. These are just five players, so no particular order. Gavin Nichols from Bishop Kelly. Barry, you're high on him.
Yes. Before the season, Bishop Kelly coach JJ Tapana said that he's got as much athletic ability and potential as anyone he's ever coached. and he's just really versatile. He was battling for the quarterback job this year and did not win the quarterback job this year, maybe next year, but he can be used all over the field and has been. He's running back in the secondary. He could really play just about most positions. The son of Tulsa's new mayor, and Gavin Nichols really could take off as a football player in 2025.
What year will he be next year?
He will be a senior.
A senior. Okay. Is he a big kid? What's he look like?
He's pretty good sized.
Yeah. Shall we go down the list here?
Yeah.
Okay. East Central quarterback Ryder and Mudinger. Did I say that right?
Ryder Munninger, yes, from East Central. Now he has sort of arrived in a sense, but because he played for East Central, this was his first year at East Central after moving. And he had passed for 3,000 yards and 26 touchdowns. And again, most of the times he would not fit under the emerging stars category. You'd say he's in the arrived stars, but we'll call him an emerging star because it seems like people are just starting to realize who he is. And again, part of that is because East Central did not make the playoffs this year, but they showed a lot of improvement in Antoine Jimerson's first year as their head coach. So I think that he is certainly a person to watch. I think East Central's program is going to take off and make the playoffs. So they're an emerging team. Call them an emerging team. And Ryder at the end of the season was put together some really big games. He passed for 500 in one game late in the season, and then they had a big win to close it out against Coweta. So he is a player to watch.
Yeah. I keep forgetting that Antoine Jimerson is at East Central. So yeah, that makes total sense that they're an emerging program. He'll do good things there.
Because yeah, that is sort of one of those things, like if you don't make the playoffs, then sometimes you sort of get put on the back burner as far as the focus. Uh, so but he really had an impressive year for them. And the program took a really big step forward. So I've seen big things for East Central, with the caveat and I say this about every team, so it's not just East Central, but with the way things go with transfers and moves these days, a big key is for a lot of coaches is you got to keep on recruiting your players to keep your group together. And so that's sort of like the caveat going into this emerging stars list. But wherever they're at, these players, we look for big things this season or in the upcoming. I already calling it this season already. We're the 2025 season is still 8 months away. Although spring football is only 4 months away.
There you go. It's spring football early preview kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Okay. This next player you and I both liked. Both like. I like him quite a bit. I won't speak for you, Barry. I'll let you go on your own here. But Wagner quarterback Stylen McHenry, he was a Coweta transfer last year, played behind Cale Charbonneau this year. I just kind of saw him. I saw most of Wagner's games this year, and he got in most games, kind of second half, kind of garbage time. But this kid looks the part, Barry. I know how I feel about him. How do you feel about him?
Exactly. When you said looks the part, that was exactly my first impression. Because I remember going to Wagner during spring practice, and Cale Charbonneau obviously is the number one quarterback. And I see, but the first part of the practice I'm at, all I'm seeing is Stylen McHenry at quarterback. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this isn't Cale. This guy, Stylen McHenry, he looks like he's an awesome talent, and like he's going to be the backup quarterback. Of course, Cale Charbonneau had an out of this world season, so there's a reason that Stylen McHenry was the backup. But oh my goodness, the first impression I got from him just watching him as a quarterback in that spring practice was like, oh wow. I think his potential, he's got a really high ceiling. And so look for big things from him. And again, he played some defense this year, so he could probably play about any position he'd want. But I'm excited to see what he can do at quarterback. And I know Cale was in one of the diary installments that you all worked on.
Yeah, Cale was a big fan. Yeah, and why not? I mean, Stylen is 6'4", big kid, throws a good ball. It was a little tough to judge this year because they weren't trying to really run up too many points because he got in the second half when Wagner the game was well in hand, so they didn't really open up the offense too much for him. So that's what's going to be as exciting as anything this year is let's see what he does in a competitive situation when the game's on the line and the playbook is open and he's doing all the things because this kid can run, he can throw. Yeah, and like you said, he plays defense too, so he gonna be fun to watch. Okay, last player on our list. Again, these aren't in order; these are just 5 players. Last one is Rejoice Christian's newly crowned state champion, Rejoice Christian, Cameron Compton Nero. What do you think about him?
Camion Compton Nero, what a talent. The first time I saw him play this year was when it was in the second game of the season when Cale Marley got hurt. And so he was thrust in at quarterback. And I couldn't believe when I learned he was just a freshman. It's sort of like Stylen McHenry. It's like, oh, wow, what a great first impression. He's got all the physical skills. And he did okay that game. That was really a tough situation for him to be thrust into, but he can play all over the field. And he was, even when Cale Marley came back for Rejoice this year. And Compton Nero got some snaps at quarterback because a lot of their games became blowouts, but he was used all over the field, made an impact on defense, and also wound up scoring, as I recall, the last touchdown on a handoff in the state championship game. So he looks like such a dynamic player, and the sky's the limit for him. Rejoice has another freshman that caught my eye, Holt Wilson, who had a big interception in the championship game. So I think those are definitely players to watch, emerging stars. So Compton Nero already had 1,200 total yards in just a real limited amount of time this year. And so to imagine what he could do playing full time in a full season, wow.
Holt is Chance's brother, right?
I had not asked about that, but I believe so. He looks like him.
I'd have to go back and check, but I think that's right because I remember. Yeah, I think that's right. Okay, I think pronounce his name one more time, Barry, because I think I pronounced his name Cameron, and that's not right. Why don't you say it right?
Compton Nero.
One more time.
Camion.
Camion. Okay, thank you. Want to make sure we're pronouncing the kids' names right. Shall we go to a little tournament of champions now?
Let's go back to the Tournament of Champions.
All right,
so last week.
So you and I have talked about this on previous shows. It's been a while, maybe even a couple of years, but Brian Montanati brought up at the TOC the need for a shot clock in high schools. Your thoughts on that? First off, let's just talk more generally, then maybe we can kind of get into what Coach Montanati was talking about. But is that something high schools should do in Oklahoma, Barry?
I've got mixed feelings on this because for the most part, I guess if I had to vote, I would say yes, at least at the larger school level, which is how it was broached or was supposed to be the case when they last voted on it. They separated it out. So at least at the larger school level, that they were going to go to the shot clock. And I'm going to say it's not a big deal to me whether they go to the shot clock or not at this point, because I don't see many situations, although it was sort of in the case in the TFC. Weatherford tried to take the air out of the ball against Owasso and gave Owasso some problems for 3 quarters because of it. But I think there's several logistical factors. But if I had to vote in a perfect world, I would say go to the shot clock, at least in classes 6A and 5A, and see how it goes there. But again, 95% of the time, it really doesn't come into play there. I think in some ways, there's less of a need of a shot clock now than there was 40 years ago, because defenses, if they want to take the ball away, in the offenses, as far as fundamentals, it's really hard for a team, if they're being pressured by the opponent's defense, especially at the larger school level, to hold on to the ball, even if it wants to, for longer than 30 seconds. But the logistics part of it is also something to consider, because it's an added expense. You're going to have to get shot clocks, and then you're going to have to train people to run the shot clock. So that's another thing. But if you could install it for football, I think you can pull this off in basketball. But there were some problems in football in that transition phase as far as getting people to run the clock properly. And you need a skilled person to do it. It's not I mean, most of the times people make it look easy, but it really isn't. I mean, there have been some games I've been to where the referee says just shut off the play clock because the clock operator isn't doing a good job on it. But I will say yes at the 6A and 5A level. It's funny that you should ask me about this because I was looking back at a survey that I did of state coaches back in 1989 on the shot clock. This was a hot topic back then, even. And you could probably just replay the comments from that column in 1989, just to change the names of the coaches. It pretty well breaks down now the way it did back in 1989. As far as larger schools like it, smaller schools don't. Same arguments. So it's one of those things. I think eventually the pressure will become too much and that we will at least get it in 6A and 5A. And why not? Why not make your game more like the college game? Because if you want players to get used to playing college rules, which is the aspiration for a lot of them, albeit not all of them, but for a lot of them, that's the aspiration. So why don't you get it? Why don't you start doing that to get them used to the college rules?
It was your first time to see Owasso play this season, Barry. What was your impression of Owasso?
Look like indeed one of the nation's top 20 teams. They really should be. They deserve to be ranked among the top 20. They beat 2 of the top 10 down in their Florida trip. They lost to 2 of the top 20 as well, but to go 2-2 on that trip to Florida against top 20 of the nation's top 20, that says a lot. Combined with their state championship from last year, looking like a better team than they had last year, or at least the potential to have a better team. And then to come to the Tournament of Champions and pull off what they did, 7 games in 11 days against intense, high quality competition. They easily could. That was really impressive because they admitted they were sort of dragging, understandably, in the last couple of games of the TFC. And it was really hard. They had to really dig deep. But they did it. They found a way. And that just showed you the progress and the determination of this team. And there are a couple of games there. The Millwood and Weatherford games in the Tournament of Champions, those were games that I think a year ago at this time that they might have lost because that tempo of play really gave Owasso trouble last year. And even this year, although last week, again, it's sort of like if you're going to beat Owasso, that's probably the tempo that you're going to have to play at anyway. But I think Owasso's, all the games they played in such a short amount of time, I think that magnified the problems that they had last week as far as those tough games with Millwood and Weatherford. And maybe they have those tough games anyway because Millwood and Weatherford are really good. But
how does Jalen Montanati's game look different than maybe it did last year?
I just think he's just very subtly, he looks a little stronger inside. I mean, this game looked really good last year as a sophomore. I just think it's a little bit, just shows maturity and strength in subtle ways.
Okay.
Again, he was the state player of the year last year. So it's really hard to get a lot better than that, at least at the high school level, but it's just more in subtle ways that I see from him.
Yeah, he's just a junior, Barry. It feels like he's been around 5 years.
Yeah, I know. And as he and his dad admit, he did not, probably because fatigue set in, because he was playing every minute of every game virtually, except for the TFC opener against Wilson. He got like the fourth quarter off. But for all those 7 games, he was playing virtually every minute, couldn't afford to take him off the court. So I think fatigue affected his outside shooting a bit, but still, even with that, he was the Tournament of Champions MVP.
But the story of the tournament, if I were to ask you this, which I did ask you before we started recording, the story of the tournament is a little town called what, Barry?
Quinton, the Quinton girls. What a roller coaster ride. I think this may be what people remember most from the tournament, besides Owasso winning, except perhaps Owasso, the Owasso boys. And don't want to diminish the accomplishment of Markayla Johnson and the Booker T. Washington girls for winning, but Quinton, what a roller coaster ride in the tournament. There have been some teams throughout the years that have seemed to come to especially in the smaller class teams. You take a chance on this. You wonder, because not every small school team has the talent that translates necessarily to playing larger schools. And sometimes through the years, we've seen we've seen a lot of small school success stories, but sometimes we see some small schools that is just, oh my goodness, they're just overmatched. And that's what I was fearing about Quinton in the opener when they played Lincoln Christian. Midway in the second quarter, they're down 25-0. Like, oh my goodness, this is poor Quinton. Now, Lincoln Christian's really good, but they wound up losing by about 35, 40 points. So you're thinking, oh my goodness, Quinton. They have to the next day play Edmond Memorial, the defending TFC champion, 6A Edmond Memorial. So you got 6A Edmond Memorial against little Class A Quinton. And so I'm thinking, this is probably, and you'd think Edmond Memorial is going to be really fired up after losing in its opener, getting upset by Fort Gibson in the opener. So this could be really ugly. So you look up at the scoreboard and see, I was just coming back from some interviews from the previous game, and I look up on the scoreboard and I see it's like already this 9 or 11-0. I thought, oh yeah, Quinton's just going to get smashed. And then I see, oh, it's Quinton's up 11-0. And then Quinton's up 14-0. Then Quinton's up 20-0. And eventually it was 23-0. Wow. They're up 23-0 on 6A Edmond Memorial. And eventually it's 33-6 at half. But then in the second half, it was like Edmond Memorial wakes up and they erase the lead and take control of the game, it looked like, in like about an 8-minute span. All of a sudden, Edmond Memorial just so quick. I mean, they do have 2 Power 4 signees on them. So you felt, yeah, this was not in the bag for Quinton at half, even though they're up by 27. So Edmond Memorial takes a 4-point lead early in the fourth quarter. And you think, well, nice try, Quinton. You get a lot of credit for being up 27 at half, but it's not going to happen. Then Quinton recovers and winds up winning the game anyway. They shut out Edmond Memorial for the last 4 or 5 minutes of the game. And that's so crazy. And so the next day, you figure, well, Quinton's had its moment in the tournament. And so they're down 17 to Glenpool, 4A Glenpool at halftime. You thought, yeah, Quinton, they probably left it all on the court the previous day. Totally understandable. Well, wouldn't you know, in the second half, Quinton wipes out that 17-point deficit and wins the game. They go 11 of 15 on threes.
Wow.
So Quinton girls, awesome. So impressed.
I don't even know where Quinton is, Barry. Where is it?
It's southeast of Tulsa, about 100 miles or so.
All right, we'll leave it there for this week. And that is a wrap on 2024. Barry and I will be back next week in 2025. We'll probably talk a little more football, a little more basketball, and whatever else we feel like it. Barry, appreciate the knowledge as always.
All right, thanks, Patrick. Happy New Year, everybody.